Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show. My name is Stephanie Hayes, and I'm a business strategist who loves to speak with like-minded entrepreneurs to share their real stories and the gritty details on building their businesses. On this show, you won't hear about the glamorized entrepreneurship journeys that you can see online. You won't be told how to make six figures in 6 weeks. Instead, you can expect to hear real, vulnerable, and inspiring stories that you can relate to that have helped create the foundation for each of our guests' businesses. Goodbye, boss babes. Hello, real life entrepreneurs. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Becca Rich. Becca is an engineer that turned into a holistic time coach and educator. She works with women entrepreneurs who are sick when they think about time management, and yet they know that making the most of their time is the missing piece for the joyful, well-balanced, and successful business and life that they want. She supports them in simplifying their schedules, healing never enough time, and discovering how to feel productive and at peace, focused and flexible on their terms. Welcome to the show, Becca. Thanks so much for taking the time to share your story today. And we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Hey, Stephanie, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you're in Croatia right now, and you are a digital nomad. We need to get this out of the way first, because it's just like I'm living vicariously through you, and I'm so excited to hear about your travel and your journeys. But tell me more about how that came to be, and then I want to dive into the work.
Yeah, this is sort of part of the work as well. I grew up with an entrepreneur as a dad, with immigrant entrepreneurial, hustling grandparents, and they really instilled in me the message of one, obviously travel, really important to see the world, see different cultures, and also, which is why I'm in the work that I do, the field that I do, of hustle, of, work is number one, go hard, do all the things. And that's led me to be an engineer. And I worked in the petroleum industry actually for a few years. And basically the entire time I was in the cubicle life, I was saving up to become a digital nomad. My husband and I immediately were like, nope, this is not the move. And it came from, essentially burning out while I was in school to become an engineer. I was in the hospital trying to, finish a deadline or something for a class that I was in at the time. And after that, I was like, nope, I'm just going to do this just because I think I should. My grandparents were in, federal government. I'm going to follow in their footsteps. I'm going to be the good engineer. And a few years in, I quit in July of 2020, already planned before the pandemic. It wasn't a pandemic quit. And my husband and I took the leap, went for it, and became full-time travelers. He hates the term digital nomads too. So that's always funny.
Just don't say time traveler, because that's a whole other thing.
I'm a time and space traveler.
Yeah, we had this conversation before we started the interview, and I think what I might be is like a later in life digital nomad. My kids are teenagers now. I wanted to give them roots, and so we are where we are. But I think that when they're old enough to sort of fly the coop, maybe my daughter and I will go out traveling together. She's pretty stoked at the idea too. So we'll see, but I'll live vicariously through people like you until then. So this is a great theme, because I think a lot of people that I know who are entrepreneurs came from that same kind of upbringing where it was like, work hard, work hard. I remember my dad saying to me once, oh, you're consulting into all of these government organizations. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could get a good government job? I'm like, no, I'd slit my wrists. Like, this would be the end of all things that I absolutely love and know. And so tell me more about that sort of like that pull, because it must have been challenging to walk away from that, long education and opt for something far more creative.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my strengths, Stephanie, or superpowers, is taking risks, is taking action and going for things. And so I know that it's not as easy or as tangible for other folks, but for me, I moved away at 17, 1,000 miles away from home, didn't know anybody. I'm just that type of person. And so when I burned out, and I became a yoga teacher, a Reiki healer. I started my first business at like, I don't know, 21 years old, doing Reiki healing, private yoga, and then hosted my first yoga retreat at 23, I think. Like it's just been in my blood. Like I remember driving around in the car with my dad from job site to job site, like thinking up all of the most wild entrepreneurial kind of like businesses that we could start or ideas. And so of course that like it's just always been there for me. And the risk taking, I guess, is also like in my blood. And so I kind of just went for it. And of course, like my husband, I mean, he was a server at the time and he received the COVID unemployment. And so we saved up prior to quitting. We lived off of savings for a year. We lived with my uncle, who had a spare apartment on an organic farm near Yellowstone over the summer. And so we went on an adventure and made it work, and like bootstrapped it for the first year as we grew our own businesses. And now my husband is a successful food and travel writer and editor, and I'm full-time in my business. It's swinging. I'm fully booked out in one-on-one clients right now. And we just put our nose down while also with balance and like made it happen. And it was definitely hard, but yeah, to circle back, taking risks is like my middle name, I guess.
Well, the intention, I think, is important, right? And I think until you really it sounds like you just decided, right? You decided and that was going to happen. And so then we get much more focused on making decisions that are going to support that vision, right? But so tell me what you have built now. So you are a time coach.
Yeah. And so like one of the biggest things I think that has made me successful in taking this leap and living this lifestyle was all of the healing and transformation that I personally did around time, right? And like driving myself into the hospital because I was working so hard, feeling like I was unworthy of rest. Like I remember my skin feeling like I was crawling every time I tried to sit still. And so my own healing, while I was, doing Reiki and yoga teaching, I just started noticing that everybody found it equally as challenging to sit still and take care of themselves and, put themselves first on their to-do list and make time for the things that really were important for them. And so I started transitioning around January of 2020, right before the pandemic, towards what is now holistic time coaching, and I also certify other coaches in it as well. And so over the last 3 years, it's really been about healing, continuing to heal myself from all of like the messages that we learn about time and have like been ingrained in us around time, and continue to stay focused on the vision of how I want to spend my life, and make decisions every single day to honor my true self and honor my vision, my values and my vision. And that's what I ended up starting to help other people do. And now I get to do that.
Yeah, so this is an area that I'm particularly interested in because I do a lot of work with my clients on breaking down that that mental garbage that we have inherited. I grew up in the .com industry, right? So we would literally work mandated 7 days a week, 14, 15, 16 hours a day. We just lived at the office. Honestly, we lived at the office and we would sleep under the desks, and like it was seen as a badge of honor in those days. And I grew up in the tech industry, and same kind of thing, all the startups, all the little software companies. And it became like your whole worth was tied to how hard you work. And then you start to kind of get a little older, you take a step back from that and you realize that that's a bunch of garbage. And I remember consulting into a bigger company once, and someone said to me, I was there at 10 o'clock at night. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I have to get this done, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Listen, we're not saving lives, right? Nobody's going to die if you don't finish this tonight." I said, but I have a deadline. He says the deadline can wait. Like it's okay. I remember that just flipped something in my head. And since then, it's been a sort of slow descent into this very intentional, like very spacious type of way of not managing my time, but managing my work. So
Yeah.
I would love to hear your perspective on digging into some of that.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, to bring up is when we think of time management, like what do we think of? We think of like hacks and pop culture, sort of like the same 10 productivity advice. And we think of tools and project management software and like all the tangible things. And what we don't think about is how we think about time and how we feel about time and how we um, our perception and our privilege and our identity and like who we are as an individual multifaceted human being impacts how we think and feel and use our time. And yeah, like I guess that's part of what I'm doing is trying to change this perception, I guess, or like this story that we tell ourselves. Like, yes, time management is managing your time, but for me, it's about time is our life. It's a resource, and it's something that we're in relationship with, and where we can collaborate with, and we can use as an expansive tool to express to ourselves and to the people around us who we are as an individual. And so that's the work that I do is helping people heal their relationship with time so then they can be the person that they want to be and do the things that they want to do.
Well, it's crazy where we get to, right? Like I'm 47, and it is just this year that I am starting to put into a practice that my weekends are just for me or my kids or whatever, but they're not for working. And
Yeah.
I had gotten to the habit of like budgeting them in as another work day. Oh, okay, well, I've got too much on my plate, but I can just do it on Sunday. And there
Yeah.
was a time that I actually opened up my calendar to clients on Sundays, and I was
Mm.
never more miserable. And I think the thing that I hear some like the terms productivity and time management actually like make me cringe because
Yeah.
they're used in this context of there's some magic bullet that's gonna weirdly invent time for me that's going to make me be able to shovel. But all of these business owners are sitting there constantly saying, I just don't have enough time. And when I hear that, I now know that's your fault, right? You can't invent time. So there's no concept of not having enough time. There's a concept of you making decisions that don't support you and making decisions to try and stuff more and more and more, having these expectations that you should be able to do this crazy amount. So we take that all back. And I say, you got 3 things you're allowed to prioritize this week.
Yeah.
3. And then we do micro planning, right? We do micro planning on a daily basis. And what we're doing is we're taking all of the decision making out of their lives. So tell me your approach. Tell me how you work with your clients. Tell me what you take them through on a journey.
Yeah. I think, the very first part is really getting someone to pause and tune out all of the noise and tune out all the things that they need to be doing or that they, should be doing. And really come back to their truth, come back to who they are, what makes them tick, their strengths, their core values, their even like shadow parts of somebody. Like, what are the things that you know about yourself, how you work, how you learn, how you take action, and how can we foster those things with a little bit more love and compassion? So it's really just looking at a whole human being, and from there then we're able to tap into what they want to do with their time, what would make them feel fulfilled, what would make them go to sleep at the end of the day and put their head on the pillow and be like, damn, that was a really freaking amazing day the majority of the time, right? So it's about playing in the possibilities of what you would even do with time. And that's something that is often missed in the conversation around productivity and time management, the both of those things, we just go straight to strategy, and we go straight to hacks and tips and ideas on how to tame the chaos and overwhelm, and like when we cut all of the other stuff out, like you don't even really have to tame a lot of stuff, right? We just have to make sure that it doesn't come back in. We've got to keep the glass, box of boundaries up to not let all of the extra noise come back in. And so the third part of all of this is coming up with the unique skills. And when I say skills, I mean mindsets and strategies to help you uniquely spend your time in alignment with the vision, the possibilities, like what you really want to do with your time. And then of course the biggest piece of it, so like those are like the foundations. And then from there it's about practicing it, embodying it, integrating it, and actually making the changes, practicing making those decisions, experiencing all the feelings and thoughts and stuff that comes up, because everyone has stuff that comes up around setting boundaries and making decisions and staying true to yourself. And from there, yeah, we just continue to support and hold someone accountable with love and support and hand holding instead of shame.
Yes. I mean, we're so good especially as women, we're so good at shaming ourselves. I mean, we live
Yeah.
in this culture where if we don't, we're actually perceived as not a nice person, right? Like it's so messed up. So who are you working with? Who are your kind of ideal clients? Who are the people who are finding you and want this work done?
Yeah. I think the three main things that people really resonate with is like over committing, over planning, and keeping busy. Those are the three most common things. And because I'm in like the online entrepreneur space, I work with a lot of online entrepreneurs, and I sort of do that by default. I definitely work with people who have 9 to 5 jobs or who like do both, kind of like side work, kind of like entrepreneur stuff. But as long as someone wants to feel more in control or have more agency power over their time, and they experience a lot of like that overcommitting, over planning, keeping busy, those are my people. Recovering overachievers here, over here.
Yeah, no, there aren't very many of those. I haven't experienced
No,
them.
there's like two. There's like two in the world,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
they've
so
hired
small
me.
market. So how are you finding these guys, and what's your best marketing strategy?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like a lot of in the beginning of my business, a lot of my clients were from people who knew me, who were in group programs with me, who felt my energy, who, of course, had some foundation of trust. And then from there, now the majority of my clients either come from SEO. Obviously, that's a really aligned marketing strategy for me personally, because it keeps building and building, organically. And then Instagram as well. I think a decent bit of clients come from Instagram now.
And what are you doing to sort of build that client base? Like I love that you're relying on SEO for sure. And then in terms of referrals, in terms of like who's that network that's feeding work into you?
Yeah, that's something that is definitely one of the biggest things that I'm going to work on in 2023 is like literally the thing that I'm working on this week is my referral, um, you know, program or whatever you want to call it, like a referral community. I definitely have some business coaches and some people that are sending people to me, and they, hire me, of course, if they feel connected and resonant with it. But yeah, I'd say the majority of this year was all from SEO or Instagram.
Nice. And you grew up with an entrepreneur dad and likely got a lot of advice around being an entrepreneur. What's the number one thing you've learned just based on your own experience? And you've obviously been traveling quite a bit and seeing how it feels to have that agency over your own time. So if you were the one giving the advice, what's the number one thing you've learned?
Yeah. In the first year of venturing into the online business space, of course, I, bought all the online courses, downloaded all the freebies. I feel like everybody sort of goes through that little phase. And then they realize like, oh, I actually need someone that can like meet me where I'm at and like help me and stuff. And so um, what I learned from my father and my grandfather as well is like lean as possible. Like I guess less is more is another way of saying it. And I firmly don't believe that time is money. I think time is our life, and our life is not exchangeable with money. But they're connected because of how our society is set up, and it's on purpose. And so um, when we feel stretched thin on time, it's often because people spend a ton of money on courses and things and coaches and consultants. And 100%, obviously, I believe in them because I am a coach, but um, being able to do so after paying you was the biggest thing that changed in my business. And so my second year in business, I was like, all right, I'm paying myself 65% of every single dollar that I make in my business. And then that is how much money I have to spend on courses, coaches, whatever else that I want in my business, on all the operating expenses. And I think that was a lesson that I learned from my dad. And that has helped me so much with my time, because I am not filling my schedule up with courses and group programs and masterminds and all the things anymore. And I actually have money, so I don't have to feel like I need to work all of the time. So it's sort of like a huge interconnectedness of leanness or sustainability.
Spoken like a true engineer, right? We're going back to lean tech, lean concepts. But so I want to dig a little bit into this because I really like this. And when people think about time, they think about, oh, I need like tools, or I need some, 4-hour work week framework or something like that. But what I'm hearing you say, and what I really love, is that actually all these other things affect how much time you have and affect your agency over your time. And so do you ever go into those things, budgeting or managing your money or what you're charging or any of that? Because you're absolutely correct that this stuff all is interconnected.
Yeah. So I actually just came out like last week or 2 weeks ago with my first digital product that kind of talks about money a little bit. And so it's called Calculated, and it's just a one-page spreadsheet where you put in how much money you want to take home per month. And then it has like percentages based on, all the different, like what each percent should go to. And then you put in how much time you want to spend working a week, and then it will pop out how much you should charge for your services. And so that is like the first thing that I've put out into the world that has connected money. But essentially, like that, at the end of the day, that's the most foundational thing that we can do for our time is how much money do we need to survive or thrive or whatever you want to say, how much you want to work. And then you just extrapolate everything from that place. And yeah, it was what I've been doing for the last 2 years, and it works really freaking well.
I love that. And I would love to link to that in the show notes. So if you can make sure you send me that link, we'll get it in there. And so tell me a little bit about your offers, like how you're actually working with people. Is this long-term, short-term? What do you like?
Yeah. So I love, love, love one-on-one coaching. Like it's so funny when I talk to people who are more like business oriented, they're like, oh, you got to do group programs and memberships and like all this stuff. And for me, like where I'm at, I'm like, nah, I don't want to be on all the time. Like, absolutely not. So what I have, I do 3 different main offerings aside from like small digital products when I feel like it. Um, so I have a VIP day, and in this VIP day, I help someone design an entire holistic digital calendar system that includes them first and their responsibilities. And we talk about all the things that go into building a schedule and digital calendar system that just takes care of everything, like all of it. The second service that I offer is one-on-one coaching, and I offer them in 6 or 12 packages. And a lot of my clients will renew, or they'll move into like a maintenance sort of quarterly thing. So I've been working with clients for up to 2 years, 2.5 years, in more of a maintenance mode once we get over like the initial calming of the nervous system and like sorting things out and organizing and all. And then the third one, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I have a certification program. So I'm now running once a year a continuing education. It'll be ICF certified, as a CE program to certify coaches in holistic time management to then help their clients with time.
Oh, that's so smart. I mean, the leverage is really in that stepping up another level, and what can you teach people who teach, right? And I think that's super
Yep.
smart. What does it take to get the ICF certification?
So ideally, it's someone that's already a coach, either through the ICF or not. And so that's like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But, for me, are you asking for me or for like a student?
For your program to be able to offer that.
Yeah, so you just go to the ICF and apply. So you would
Okay.
submit like your resources and training schedule and what resources you give, and then they'll give you a ICF like CE program
Yeah,
stamp.
that's smart. Very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And when are you going to start offering that?
So I offered it as like the first beta round back in August or September. Can't remember when we started. I think it was August, and it was 8 weeks. So August, September, October. And then I think 6 people were in that, and I was going to launch it again in January. And then I realized I was being overly ambitious and I want more space and whatever. Especially I'm taking the whole month of March completely off to go travel Asia. So I'm relaunching it again in probably late July, August.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so what does the future look like for you? What are you, give me sort of like the 2 years out.
You're so funny. I don't have a vision. I have like a gentle vision, but I don't really do that anymore. But I would say for me, just like consistent stability and serving. I love, love, love all 3 offers that I have. Like I said, I kind of like have a couple of digital products that I'll throw around the internet sometimes when I feel like it, but that's not my goal. Like I want to work with people and creating like a deep, deep transformative healing around their time. And that just looks like holding space for folks. That looks like seeing people, welcoming them as they are, and letting them discover how amazing they are as well, and spend their time in alignment with their hearts and their minds and their bodies and what they truly want. And I'm already doing that. So as long as I can continue doing that, I'm going to keep doing that until it doesn't serve me anymore.
But I think it's an important response, right? Because I don't think you need to have some big grandiose vision for the future, and not a lot of people. In fact, I would say more people don't want that. They want to do what feels really good. They want to do good work. They want to maintain a lifestyle, and they want to, be well compensated for doing it. But I think your answer is important, because I think a lot of people feel that pressure to try, and just because I'm in business, I need to grow it to be huge. Well, more and more people don't want that.
Yeah.
No.
We don't need it. It's all part of the game, the scam that we've all bought into, right?
That's right.
Is more, 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 more.
And some people do, right? Some people are really wired that
Sure.
way. They're like, I'm going to build a big, like, that's what I want to do. And that's also completely fine. But
Yeah.
I think giving people permission to be like, man, I'm going to micro business, and like, this is really satisfying for me. And the fact that I can walk out my door and just like leave it there is huge. And
Yeah.
so this is an important response.
Yeah. And I will add to that, like the last 2 summers, well, not this past summer, but the previous 2 summers, I was on my uncle's organic veggie farm, and I didn't realize how, and it was in a small city with one stoplight that was new. And going from New Orleans, living downtown New Orleans to this, of course, was a 180. And from there, that's when I felt my nervous system. I felt like okay with being alone. I felt okay like being held by nature and hiking like multiple times a week. And um, that was is going to be sort of like the dream life, right? Like who else wants to live on a little organic veggie farm with solar panels in your own well and like be completely off the grid and hike every weekend? Like that is the freaking life. And then if I could like I work with clients 3 days a week, so if I could continue to work with clients 2-3 days a week and be a veggie farmer, like life goals.
Yeah, I live in a small town that's all like outdoor recreation, right? So for us, like it's almost like if you don't go on hikes 3 days a week, like you don't really belong here. So
Yeah.
there's actually a flip side to that. But like, so going back to this sort of interplay and this interconnectedness of all the things and all the decisions that we make in our business and how that does affect our time,
Yeah.
being in a situation where you are really thriving and where you have the opportunity to be surrounded by things that are interesting outside of just the work that you do, like how important is that? Because you're location independent. You've been, I don't know how long you've been traveling for, but you've had the opportunity to see, a lot of
Yeah.
other perspectives. And so how has that affected your outlook and your perspective on time?
Yeah, so much so. I use a lot of like my travel as sort of like inspiration or like stories about time. Like, I'm in Croatia, and I think that a lot of Europeans similar, um, they go to a coffee shop and drink a little cup of espresso over the course of an hour and a half, 2 hours, without their phone, without their books. Like they just sit and watch people. And could you imagine that? Like every day, spending 2 hours drinking one little cup of espresso, not being rushed by your server with the bill. Like it's even hard sometimes to get the server to come over and give you their money. And so I think that was a huge lesson of around time of like, it's not all like the US. It's not all hustle bustle everywhere. Like I think that, growing up in the US, like this is the norm. This is how life is. And then you get out of the norm and you're like, oh like this is not the norm everywhere. And that was really enlightening. Another piece of like, I guess, history. Of course, history impacts time. A lot of cities in Europe have sort of like a central place, right? In the middle of the city where the church is and the huge clock and all of this stuff, and everything is kind of like centered around this square or this city center. And that was interesting to me around time as well. Like that is what guided the motions of the city back in the day before we all had our own clocks in our hands and our pockets. And so that changed my perspective around time as well. Like, we didn't all used to live looking at a clock all day every day. And I think that there's probably a little bit of freedom potentially. Like all you had to remember is go to church once a week or whatever the thing was. When the clock was, you just went to the church to see what time it was. So that was an interesting thing. And then the last thing that I'll mention, going from place to place, every single place that I've been in, and I recently had this realization. I went to, where did we go? Mostar, Bosnia and Herzegovina. We went there for the weekend a few weeks ago. And on the bus, I was like, oh my gosh, every place that I go to, there's buses, there's dogs, there's trees, there's bushes, there's cars, there's roads. Like it's everywhere around the world. And the one thing that stays constant is me. And so I was like, oh, the world is inside of me. And that was like sort of a revelation. Like no matter where I go, my heart, my breath, like I am here. And that's the home. That's my home. And that was something that I had been searching for in productivity and success in external things outside of me. And I think that it finally clicked somewhere deeper in my body a few weekends ago.
Oh, wow. We just went on to a whole other level. I love this.
We just went deep.
Yeah. And it's so funny. I was just watching a documentary last night called Third Eye Spies. And it's about this, it was about this division of the CIA that from like for 20 years and like from like the 70s to the 90s was actually developing and using people with psychic abilities to do what they call remote viewing. Anyway, all this to say, like one half of the movie was all about this like total shift in our consciousness and how we understand and perceive ourselves in the context of all of the rest of the world. And when you start to realize that you're not there to perform for other people, you're there to perform for yourself, and you are the center, like the locus of your being, and you're the center, then it starts to like really change how you experience things. And so we could totally go into
Yes.
this, but I'm going to, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I think it's actually critically important to the way that we perceive time. So this whole shift in the work that you're doing, I think is extremely interesting. And I love that it's not about tools, and it's not about, calendars, and it's not about, shoving more into the already limited time that we have. It's about valuing and seeing time differently. So I think this is really, really important work. So there's one question I ask everybody just before we finish. This whole show is about being real and about, breaking down some of the perceptions that we have kind of grown up with. What's the difference between what we hear out there in the business world and what's real?
I think for me, bringing it back to my work, like I bought into the whole, like, I could get this up and running in 6 months. And that I think is one of the things that I probably regret most, is like that first year in business when the whole time I was like, this should be exploded by now. Like this should be way further ahead. I should be getting DMs and emails from people that want to work with me, breaking down the door by just by posting once saying, hey, I'm a time coach, like work with me, right? And going back to, I guess, my work, like we put timelines and expectation and deadlines and pressure on ourselves that we create. And a lot of the times we create, I won't say every single thing we create because I think that's BS, but a lot of the times we create them or we bought into them via someone else. And it comes back to divine timing. It comes back to being intentional and claiming the amount of agency you do have over your time and making the most of that time in an aligned way. And from there, like, I don't know if I would have like heard this sentiment years ago and been like, F that, but like, it really does fall into place when you stay true to yourself. And that is what happened to me. And I see it happen all of the time with the people that I work with. And the more and more that we shed these expectations and deadlines and stories about where we should be and how far along we need to be and how behind we are or whatever, the sooner we can get there.
I agree. And the first work that I do with my clients is like really figuring out who they are, because oftentimes they don't know, right? They've defined themselves in the context of all the things that they see out there in the world, and they haven't taken the time to come back to really like examine themselves. And that's an incredible first step before we can do any of this other work. Okay, so we're coming up on time. I want to thank you so much for being here. Can you tell our listeners how they can find you?
Yeah. go over to our BFF Google, type in Becca Rich or the Holistic Time Coach, and you can find me on Instagram or my website. And I have all the things that you can message me or contact me if you would like.
Awesome. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes. And I'd love to put a link into the tool that you've created around money as well, because I think that's a really important component.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a wrap. I'm so happy we had the opportunity to chat with Becca today to hear more about how her business came to be, her experiences along the way, and what the future of the business entails. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Real People, Real Business Show, where we get the real entrepreneurial stories and journeys that you can relate to. The show notes, resources, and links from this episode are available on my website and social media platforms. And thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on to help us share these genuine stories with an even bigger audience. Until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.